So marketplace persistent ACL. So our plan for today is like some kind of introductions, and we will talk about ACL. In general, we will talk about persistent ACL. I will talk about persistent ACL, what it is, why we need it, what is it, and how it can be used. And then we will go deeply into the details of how it works, how it's implemented, and what actually you could do on in your project with this feature. Yeah, so quick intro. So I'm Valerii Pravoslavnyi. It's my name. I'm application architect at Spryker. I'm working like, I don't know, and in total almost 4 years for a company, the Spryker, and yeah, working as application architect, covered a lot of topics, also worked on some projects, implementation, and in the different like on the different part of the system. So yeah, but let's go to our topic. And what is ACL? Actually, ACL, or how it's Wikipedia told us, ACL or access control list is a list of permissions associated with a system resource, object of a facility. And ACL specifies which user or system processes are granted access to resource, as well as what operations are allowed on the given resource. Each entry in typical ACL specifies a subject and an operation. But but to make it like to put it simply, an ACL is like a security mechanism that could be considered as a set of rules or permissions associated with each resource. Like the rules define who can read, write, modify, or execute the resource. But what about persistent ACL? So our persistent ACL it is specific, cover only a specific niche of control resources, and exactly this feature allows to manage authorization at the database entity level or even within a set of entities or segments. This feature enables a flexible system of inheritance of rights and simplifying the configuration of access. Persistent ACL runs in the persistent layer, like you can see in the diagram. It's a like lowest layer before you connect to database directly. Actually, so there is some limitation. Our persistent ACL feature is based on proper ORM, and it means that it will work only in case you are trying to access data or manipulate with your data only using proper ORM and not to interact with data in your system directly with, for example, like raw SQL. In general, persistent ACL supports permission checks both when executing queries and also when performing some action on active record models in Probal. Upon installation, configuration code is injected into the active record models, Probal active record models and query classes. They check this code checks the user permissions for appropriate actions. And actually module this functionality based on the proper hooks, like during module operation can be pre-insert, pre-update, pre-delete operations, and same for the queries on the query execution. It performs using the pre-select query or pre-update query or pre-delete query hooks. So actually each query that's sent into database is intercepted and modified with additional joins to limit results of the queries only like return only, for example, return only records available for the current user, or in case of a user who is not allowed to make, for example, delete operations entity on the database entity, the system just throw exception. But yeah, actually, why do we need this persistence ACL? And why we are talking about it in scope for our and this talk name of this talk is Marketplace Persistent ACL, because actually when you're a single merchant and just have usual B2C, B2B setup and all data belongs to you, it is easy to control access only like to specified functionality. For example, one user group can manage products, but another processing orders, etc. So ACL on the action level is enough. But when marketplace setup comes into play and you provide service for third-party merchants who need to manage own products, own prices, orders, etc., it is not enough. As a marketplace operator, you as a marketplace operator don't want to share your own data with other merchants, as well as they must not be able to get access the data to others. And for example, like it should not be possible to cancel orders of competitors, for example. So actually, it's why Persistent ACL was introduced and specifically usable and usable in marketplace setup to have proper control of data access. So let's start with I don't cover, so I start with persistent ACL configuration because as previous speakers mentioned, we have good documentation that provide information and good installation and integration guide for this functionality. When you install and configure and integrate this feature or just get a merchant portal set up, everything comes with the pre-configured persistent ACL feature, and all sensitive data are secured by default. All new merchants and merchant users get all the necessary ACL and persistent ACL entities created. For example, when you see on these diagrams, so as soon as merchant created, the specific merchant role also created in the system. Same for the merchant user. As soon as a user created merchant specific role and merchant user specific roles are created, and these specific roles are assigned to this new merchant and users, to this new merchant user. It's important. So each time when you create allow certain new third-party merchant and their users to work with the system, they already have all configuration in place, and they know that their data are on the control in the safe, and actually they can't access data of other merchants. So as I said, merchant specific role, merchant user specific role, and also created and also specific product viewer role that is needed for creation of product offers created and assigned to new merchant users. And this configuration that provided like by default is really complex, and you can see it's like high level overview, a really simplified overview of the configuration. So we configure like a lot of access to a lot of entities. Some entities are simple entity, but we have a lot of composite entities. So composite entities means composite entity concept was introduced because sometimes one main entity could not be covered with one database table on the database level. It requires like some, for example, merchant contains also merchant profile, merchant stock, merchant store, some others details, and so on. And all these tables are sub-entities of single composite merchant entity. It means that if you allow it to, for example, edit merchant data, it means that you allow it to edit as well all composite or sub entities. Here you see some also see these green boxes. It means that some for some entities we configure global scope, and such entities are allowed to at least forget access for any user, any merchant user in the system. For example, it's like basic entities like countries, regions, currency, locales, and so on. Yeah, but it's default configurations that come from the core implementation. But what if you want to change something? Yeah, we have really intro. The Merchant portal comes with all this pre-configuration, all these default rules, and so on. But of course, to have full control on your project, you must be able to configure, extend, replace, overwrite everything, and define your own rules. So you simply can implement specific interface. It's ACL entity metadata config expander plugin interface. You could extend at any specific rules that needed in your system, in your setup, and to overwrite a list of the rules that created automatically for merchant. You could use and override configuration, and this method get merchant ACL role entity users entity rules, sorry, and to override rules that automatically created for merchant user, you need to override and change, do some customization in this get merchant user ACL role entity rules. So it's provide for the project possibility to extend and do customization of this default configuration that in the coming place from the core. But of course, you probably can add some new entities, some new entities, add some sub entities for big for already existing composite entities and so on, and you need to carefully configure everything. So for that, you have extension points in the system and you could use it. Yeah, for example, I just put here example of how a new system object or new entity, new table can be configured in the code. So for example, if you need, let's imagine that we added merchant subscriber table, which is actually proper active record class. So add this, we add it into configuration. So this expander will add this new entity into default configuration. This, as we said, as a parent SPY merchant entity, it means that this entity will inherit all rules that applied for SPY merchant entity and your role, user role, who roles of the user who performs the action. It means that, for example, if a current user is allowed to, I don't know, to edit merchant data, it means that it will be allowed to execute, to update also this merchant new entity. And then it's important to configure rules for your role. For example, here we just add a new rule for merchant role for this new entity, which is merchant subscriber. We need to set scope. We set here inherited. It means that all configuration are copied, inherited, from parent entity, and in our case, it is merchant entity. And also we can set additional permission mask for this rule. So for example, in this case, a user who has this merchant role, ACL role, will be available to create, read, update, and delete our new merchant subscriber entity. So actually, the rules, as I mentioned in the beginning, the rules, it's like a basic concept of any ACL. And now I want to describe in details how you could configure these rules and what exactly you can achieve with our Persistent ACL feature. So rules, as you see on this example before, you could set entity, set scope, and set permission mask. So this actually three most important configuration of the rule, and let's go deeply into each of it. So entity, it's actually just a name of the entity. To specify it correctly, we need to provide to make everything works. We need to specify the fully qualified namespace, fully qualified class name for the active record proper class of this entity that we for which we want to create rule. Then scope. There is three types of rules of scopes. It's global, segment, and inherited. I will describe all of them a bit later, but it depends on the scope. Depends on the scope. You could configure really like custom rules. For example, like it's really flexible. It lets you create any rule. Like maybe you need to grant read-only access to only all products in some specific. For example, if we are talking this standard demo shops terms, so for example, for D store, you could configure only so user can read or see only products for D store. Another rule will be configured to see only products of only orders, for example, for the Easter and so on and so on and so on. So there is a lot of possibility to customize it. And permission mask, it's actually integer representation of the binary permission mask, and yeah, it's create, read, update, and delete, but it's actually probably most much easier configurations than scope. So scopes can be, as I already mentioned, global, inherited, and segment scope. Global scope rules apply to entire collection of entities. It means for all records in the table. For example, as long as user has corresponding global rules with permissions, the persistent ACL will not restrict the user from performing their action. For example, it's easy to configure global scope and global access rules for some global entities like locale or currency or country and so on. Inherited scope rules are applied when you need to grant access to an entity, to child entity, as in the example before, that it inherits from another entity, from another parent entity. A good example, for example, if we want to grant access to the customer, it means that probably everyone who has access to manage customers will be able also to manage to see, update, delete, and actually manage customer address data. So in this case, we will just use inherited scope, and it means that all rules, all configurations that apply to the parent entity will be applied also to child entity as well. And most interesting, segment scope. Segment scope actually let you grant permission to subset of an entity collections. Segment entities are connected through plain many-to-many tables in database. This actually minimizes performance impact. And here, actually using this segment scope, you can configure really specific rules, like I don't know, as I said, orders from the ES store, or orders with a total greater than $100, or like I don't know, orders from customer only from customer with ID 3 and so on. It's important that you also could create dynamic segments, and for example, using I don't know, for example, using by handling product created and updated event, you can maintain specific segment of products. For example, maybe only red products should be available for some specific user, or maybe only products with some specific label and so on. And permission masks. So actually we have this for masks, it's read, create, update, and delete operation. So you could access not only, for example, you could see, you could set the rules that merchant user can see all orders, but by specifying action for example, only read, you can restrict as a user from creating or modifying orders, for example. Yeah, it's just representation of binary mask, and every CRUD operation has its own binary mask. So it's just like commonly used approach to work with permission mask. Yeah. So now, when we defined all rules, and user actually go to, for example, merchant portal and try to perform execute some query. So actually retrieve list of, I don't know, maybe orders. So it's our execution flow. So first we see for the so actually, yeah, by default, rules with a global scope have the highest priority, and rules with segment scope have the lowest priority. But it also can be we have possibility to, on the project level, to override these priorities, and you could set up your own priorities. But if you just set up the feature, you will see this. So, for example, if so users started to modify to execute query, we check global scope rules. If some rules exist, so it means that query should not be modified. For example, it's a real example is accessing the list of countries. When you manage, for example, customer addresses, you could just easily, without any restriction, select country of the address. Then we check inherited scope. So, for example, if some rules exist or should be inherited from this parent entity, then segment rules, if some rules exist, we apply these results to the query. It means some additional join will be added. For example, if customer want to retrieve list of customer addresses, it means that join with customer table will be added automatically, and only addresses that belongs to customers to which user has access will be returned. Then we check operation mask for the entity, and yeah. So if query operation is permitted, we just modify query and return return empty collection in case it's not available, if user don't see any data. So most important that we will allow to execute query, but if user has no access to any data according to his rules, it means that he will get empty results. And actually it is main difference with from the model action processing flow, where we also check rules, but and finally, if we found some rules and we finally check if operation is permitted, we just allow user to, for example, create the record, or if it's not permitted, we just throw an exception, as I mentioned in the beginning. So it's main difference when we process, when persistent ACL applied to the queries, it means that you will always get results, but it can be empty in case you are not permitted to do some operation on the model level. It means that exception will be thrown. Actually, yeah, I'm almost done. What I want to add at the end, that persistent ACL is a really powerful feature that actually really flexible and configurable, and you could add any rules, any configuration, any customization on your project level, and configure safe and secure setup to the data in your marketplace setup. Probably that's it from my side. Thanks a lot. If you have any questions, please ask.